mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everyone, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Chapter 4 of Apple TV's Pachinko. I think this is probably the best episode we've gotten so far. We're only 4 episodes in, and all the episodes have been great, but episode 4 did so many great things. Like, there's a lot of great scenes in it, but then there's also a lot of really cool editing techniques that allow them to kind of like juxtapose multiple characters, but within the same theme. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but it ties a lot of the themes together without being very overt or having to hold your hand through it. And they use visuals and editing to connect these stories and these times in this episode. And the last 20 to 30 minutes of the episode were incredible. And they do that there, and I think they do it to perfection. So I love this episode. I thought it was great. Let's talk about it. So in 1931, that's where we start off. Hansu and Isaac, I don't know, Ishak, I don't know what we're gonna call him. I'm gonna call him Isaac. It's Isak on the captions. But then again, you all have the captions as well. They're getting ready to get married, and Hansu shows up at the tailor. And I thought this was an interesting way to start this episode, because the last time we saw, the three of them, it was Isaac and Sunja at the dock, and he sees them, she sees him, but Isaac doesn't know, he's none the wiser. So Hansu finds out that essentially she's with this guy. Then he shows up at the tailor, and in the midst of this like ridiculous like dick measuring contest, like of I can pay for that suit, that you look pathetic trying to wear that old ill-fitting suit, like he's trying to cook this dude, right? And Isaac's like, I can pay for my own suit, and I'm getting married, so I gotta make sure I look good. And I don't think he knows who Hansu is to know that was a shot, but you could tell, like, it was like the episode of The Simpsons where they go, if you pause it right here, you can see the moment Ralph's heart breaks, and Bart pauses it, and you see Ralph go like, ah. That was Hansu in that moment when he heard that Isaac had a wedding, because then he knew, like, oh man, soon just marrying this guy, he was sick. But that's all. He's just a narcissist anyway, man. He's already married, and he's over here having a fit about his side chick getting married to somebody else. Like, come on, dude. So that's where we start. I just thought that was an interesting scene to start with, and I love the fact that he seemed like legit messed up by overhearing that his side chick, who he impregnated and rejected as far as like actually being with her, finding out that she's marrying someone else, and now he's mad about it. So, like I said at the top, this episode had a lot of great scenes, and it also had a lot of like great individual scenes, but then collectively, especially in that last 20 to 30 minutes, it had a lot of cool techniques that tied a lot of themes together. So I want to continue by talking about some of these individual scenes, and then we're going to talk about kind of like that last 20 to 30 minutes and how that went and why I thought that was so good. So the first scene I want to talk about is the rice scene. There's a scene where Sunja's mother goes to the docks, to the markets, and she wants to buy rice for their dowry to give that to them as a wedding gift. She's going to cook them the rice. And the guy who works there is like, yeah, I can't really sell, we can't sell rice to Koreans because, it'll be my ass if a Japanese person comes here and wants to get rice and can't get it. And it's like, again, some like super racist shit. But like, she can't buy the rice, and she tells this whole, she tells him, her daughter's getting married, the whole thing, like, I want her to have this, this last taste of her homeland before she leaves, all this good stuff. Dude sells her the rice. She goes, and we have a nice scene of where we see how the rice is prepared, which I thought was filmed beautifully. It was a really cool scene. You get to see just how much goes into making rice in 1931 versus making rice in 2022. But a really good scene there. And then we go to their where she's essentially presenting the rice to them. And she presents it kind of just like, yeah, here you go, whatever. and like dips off. And what I loved about this entire sequence, and this episode in general as it pertains to Sunja's mother, is that she has to outwardly carry this hard persona. She doesn't approve of the fact that Sunja got pregnant at this age, that it's by some random guy. She knows what this is going to mean for Sunja's future. All of this negativity and what this means to do something like this and how it's going to make Sunja be perceived. All of this stuff. She knows this. And she has to play like this hard role on the outside. But then we see her really, really like begging to get this rice. And I thought it was an interesting way to show that on the inside, she is still a mother who still loves her daughter, who wants to give her daughter something special for her wedding, doesn't want to see her go. There's a great scene at the end where she finally breaks down crying. Like, and I love that her doing what she has to do on the outside, even though she doesn't want to do it, like the awkward conversation on the boat about how she has to make sure that he stays pleasure because even the best man can find comfort with another woman. Like all of this life advice that she's trying to pack in before Sunja leaves that she has to do in order to make sure that she can survive. But on the inside, she's still like a regular mother who is not so hardcore and who is caring, loving, and heartbroken. And I thought they did an excellent job of portraying this complex collection of emotions via visuals. She doesn't say it, but we see her demeanor when she's trying to buy the rice. I don't know, my nose itches so much. Don't get any crazy ideas. It's not that. But we see her, broken down trying to get this rice. Like she can barely even look the guy in the face. Like he's talking, she's just like looking down, like totally succumbing to whatever she has to do in order to get this rice. And then we got her just, being very curt, very short with Sunja throughout most of the episode. And I just thought that was such a great sequence of scenes to show that complex array of emotions without being, so obvious with it and having her talk about it. So I thought that was really cool. Another cool scene I liked in this episode. When I say cool, I'm underplaying it a little bit. Another great scene in this episode. Solomon goes to work to prepare for the grandmother. I'm just gonna call her grandmother because I've seen her name, but it's weird to pronounce. I don't really know how to pronounce it. I don't want to butcher it. Solomon calls her grandmother, so I'm going to call her grandmother. But when I say grandmother, I'm referring to the woman who has the land that Shifley wants to buy in order to build this hotel. The whole reason that Solomon's here in the first place. So he goes to work on the day that we assume is going to be the day that grandmother comes in to sign the paperwork to sign over her land. And Naomi is in there, and they have an interesting conversation that goes in multiple directions and gives, again, a little bit more context to culture, right? So this guy Arimoto comes in. He says something like, "How many copies of the contract do you need?" And she's like, "Motherfucker, I put it in a memo. Go read it, and then you'll figure it out." Like, she's very short with him. He leaves, and she asks Solomon if he knows how Arimoto came to work at the company. And she tells this story about how he used to be somewhere better. He wasn't quite doing well enough. And how in their culture, your family, your job is more like your family than your actual family. She even says, like, I had this thing where I would count the number of minutes that I spent with my dad each night. And if it added up to an hour at the end of the week, that was a good week. So like all that to say, she doesn't see her father too much. And that's because how it is in that culture. So Arimoto wasn't doing well. He gets fired from this job and he ends up at Shipley. And Solomon's like what's the big deal with that? And she's basically like, Shipley's kind of like a place where castaways go, like people who just can't get a job anywhere else. And then so he's like, well, so how are you here? Because he's like, you got a good family name, you got a degree, like, you're a big shot. And she is also in our culture. It's important if a woman wants to be successful that she's better than the people that she's around. And I thought that was such a cool way of her saying, like, I can't be great, but if I go somewhere where everyone else is great, I'm not going to get that credit. But if I come here where everyone else is like a castaway, I'm going to find all the success in the world. And here she is, sure enough, with Solomon and with Tom and being a big shot. And I thought that was a really cool scene, a really cool story. I liked that for Naomi, and I liked also learning about that aspect of the culture at that time. So that was pretty cool. She also noted that Shifley is much more successful in America than it is there in Japan. So, let's see, where am I? What was the other scene? I feel like there was another one or two. The scene where Kohansu has Sunja brought to him, and essentially it's his last ditch effort to get her to stay. And he says something to the effect of like, I offered you a good life and you turned it down. And she says something like, the only thing you offered me was shame. I said, ooh, that was cold-blooded comeback. But she's right. You know, that's really all he did offer her. It was like, yeah, you know, I can't be affiliated with you, but I'll come around and you and the kid I ain't gonna want for nothing, but you know, I'm gonna be over with my wife and kids, you know, for most of the time. So that's where that goes. And then he says that she's gonna go to Korea go to Japan and find that they don't treat Koreans very well over there, poor Koreans especially, and that she's gonna essentially not have a good life. She's gonna be longing for him, and he's gonna curve her I'm not even worried about you anymore. So I think that's gonna come into play later in the season. So that should be pretty good too. So lastly, I want to talk about this final 20 to 30 kick-ass minutes of this episode. So I'm gonna break it into two parts. We have like a young and old Sunja part, and then we have like the Solomon / this singer on this boat, and then grandmother, like their story as well. So we see young Sunja preparing to go to Japan. There's a lot of cool shots of like old Sunja packing to go to Korea and young Sunja packing to go to Japan. That was a nice bit of storytelling via visuals as well. Well, we see young Sunja going to Japan. She's crying hysterically over leaving. That was another great scene. Once everybody's about to get on the boat, she's screaming, crying, saying her mother's name. Like it hard not to feel a little bit something in this old black crusty heart of mine. I'm feeling a little bit of a little bit of sympathy for Sunja there. But she sees the singer going on the boat, and the singer drops like her scarf. Sunja picks it up, gives it back to her. They have a conversation about Sunja being pregnant, about to get married, and the woman says she's going to sing a song for them, for everyone on the boat. We're later going to find out just what she meant by that. But they get on the boat, Sunja's sick, and Isaac goes off to get her like water or whatever. And for one, let's talk about where they're at. They're at like the Japanese Korean equivalent of the back of the bus. They're at the bottom of the boat. It looked like where they put the poor people in Titanic, in the movie Titanic. That's where they put the Koreans. Like, you get in the basement of the boat, and that's where you're gonna hang out at. So they're down there. Isaac goes to find water, and he runs into these guys that are just there, and he asks them what they're doing there, and they say that they're going to work in the mines in Japan. And he's like, well, what about your family? And they're like, oh, my family's if we do well, the company will send our families over later. So we get that little bit of information. Upstairs, the Japanese people are having this fancy dinner, and the singer who Sunja ran into earlier is sitting next to some old man who was like creepily rubbing on her back, which was really weird. Other people looking at it like, okay, what's going on here? And then she gets up and she starts to sing. And she's singing some song in Japanese. Everything is cool. Then she switches to Korean. And what I liked about this was that they cut off the captions altogether. And they had done that earlier in the episode as well when the police came to bring Sunja to Hansu. Like, oh, man, I don't know why I blanked on his name for a minute there. But I like when they take away the captions when the person who is hearing the words doesn't know the language. So like that was a cool way of letting us know we went from blue captions to nothing as opposed to yellow captions, because if we went to yellow captions, we could assume that the Japanese people there knew Korean, but they didn't. And they're like, what's going on? What's going on? But the Korean song is resonating with the Koreans at the bottom of the boat, and they're getting hype. The Japanese people are getting pissed, and then the singer kills herself. So like this played out to me as if this was her plan the entire time. Not a spur of the moment decision or anything like that because of this creepy guy rubbing on her. When she said she was going to sing a song for everyone, that's what she meant. Like, I'm going to switch it up to Korean, and I'm going to off myself. And I thought that was an incredible scene. And then we see old Sunja actually making her way over to Korea with Solomon's father, her son. And they get to Korea. She gets out of the car prematurely and stands on the beach and lets the water flow over her feet while she's getting rained on. This is also juxtaposed with Solomon, who we see at the end of the episode as well, but I'll get to that in a moment. So in 1989, like I said, they're about to do the deal. The grandmother shows up. Solomon's there. Everyone's ready to sign. The grandmother is hesitant to sign. And Solomon basically is like, you're about to sign your way into generational wealth. Like, you should be happy. Because for Solomon, it's not about culture. It's not about pride in where you come from or what you've been through or what you overcame. For Solomon, he don't give a fuck about culture. He don't care. No, all he cares about is getting his promotion, getting his money, being successful. That's all he cares about. So he's like, you about to get generational wealth. You should be happy. Grandmother basically goes, she tells the same story that the miners told Isaac on the boat. And we can now deduce that her father is maybe not necessarily on that exact same boat with Sunja, but that her father did the same thing. Her father went over to work in the mines, and her being the grandmother and her mother were sent over, she said, a few years later. So it was a long time before they went over there. And she tells the whole story about basically the shitty circumstances that they had in Japan as Koreans, which we know that. And then she basically tells Solomon, like, now, if your grandmother told you everything I just said, would you still tell her to sign? And as the proud Korean singer who was fed up with Japanese racism and BS kills herself, Solomon tells her, I would tell my grandmother to not sign it. The grandmother walks off. I keep wanting to call him Jimmy Simpson, who plays Tom, the only white guy on the show, blows up at Solomon. Solomon takes off. He's tossing off his tie, tossing off his suit coat. And Naomi later sees him like dancing in the rain, free to what I'm assuming is some, Korean, not band like they're famous, but like just some people who are just playing music in what looked like maybe like a subway entrance or something. And now Solomon has embraced his culture. And it makes me wonder where we go with Solomon from here. Because let's say, I don't know how many episodes this is, but let's say it's like 8. After 4, it looks like we're done with corporate Solomon, and corporate Solomon is dead. So what happens with Solomon now? Because I'm assuming he's probably not going to work there no more. He's not concerned with buying this land or building this hotel, get this promotion. Like, is he going to go back to the United States? I doubt it, because what's for him there if he's not going to work at Shifley anymore? I don't know, but I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Solomon. But I loved how they bled all of these stories together to essentially just tell a story about pride in your culture and where you come from and overcoming racism and hatred and discrimination and all of these things. They tell this story with beautiful visuals, great editing, and really nice, wholesome scenes. Not wholesome when you got somebody stabbing themselves in the neck, but like, mostly feel good stuff. And I thought it was just beautiful, and I thought it was masterfully done and edited and put in front of us to watch. And I thought it was really great stuff that last 20, 30 minutes. Seeing the only struggle that I have with this show is that I struggle with Japan versus Korea. Like, I can never quite remember who's from where and where they're currently at, especially since now they're trading places and we're in 2 different times. The captions help me immensely. Again, another reason why I love the blue and yellow caption. So I'll wrap this one up with a couple of thoughts. 1, does Solomon not wear the same drawers twice? like he opens his drawer and there's like packaged underwear all in this drawer, and he takes them out, puts it on, I guess, but I don't know why my nose is so itchy. Does he just like wear a pair of underwear and then just throw them out and just open a new package? Like, he got money like that? Like, new drawers money? Like, I never wear the same drawers twice money? I mean, I'm paid okay, but I gotta washer the dryer. I can wash my drawers too, but whatever. And I thought it was a beautiful shot later in the episode when we see Kohansu, and I believe that was it was Sunja's mother, because that's the scene where she finally breaks down and cries. But a beautiful shot of them watching the boat sail away. I thought that was a great shot. So best episode of the show so far. Really enjoyable, really several great scenes and really great work in that final 20-30 minutes to kind of like bring everything home with the culture and the pride in the culture and how they mixed the times and the journeys together to tell that story. So I thought that was really great. So I will see you guys for next week for episode 5. And until then, peace.